You might have heard of the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics, the idea that every possible scenario actually happens in some parallel universe. But the two worlds interpretation says, no, there aren't infinite copies of you living out all possibilities. Instead, there's just one you here inside the universe following quantum rules, and one you out there outside the universe not bound by quantum rules. This isn't science fiction, it's a thought experiment, a way to look at one of the biggest puzzles in quantum physics, the measurement problem. Today we're diving into Mohammad Hasan Algarhy's two worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics, an idea introduced in the big Defreeze of the universe. Imagine you're holding a notebook with 120 pages, but instead of paper, each page is made of a holographic film. Each page represents a possible universe, one of the many multiverses. Now, when you look at one holographic page, it just looks like scrambled patterns. You can't tell what it's an image of until you shine a light on it. Then suddenly, a three-dimensional picture pops out. Here's the catch. When you shine that light, you're technically standing outside the holographic film's space and time. You're not bound by its laws. You're the outsider revealing its reality. This notebook thought experiment is the key to understanding the two worlds interpretation. According to this idea, there are actually two versions of you. The first version, inside our universe, living in the holographic film. Your body, your particles, everything you do is governed by quantum mechanics. Probabilities, superpositions, entanglements. The second version, outside the notebook. A version of you that does not follow quantum mechanical laws. This version doesn't live in our space or time. It's more like the version holding the light and shining it on the hologram. Here's the surprising twist. Your version in this universe needs an observer. But the second version outside space and time does not need an observer. It simply exists as the ultimate witness. Now let's clear up a common misconception. You might have heard of the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics, the idea that every possible scenario actually happens in some parallel universe. In that model, there could be a version of you who became a rock star, another who's a chess grandmaster, and another who is an Egyptian king. But the two worlds interpretation says, no, there aren't infinite copies of you living out all possibilities. Instead, there's just one you here, inside the universe following quantum rules, and one you out there, outside the universe not bound by quantum rules. The second you is like your cosmic shadow, always observing, but not interfering. This raises a lot of mind-bending questions. Where exactly is this second world if it's outside our multiverse? What laws does it follow if not quantum mechanics? How do these two versions of you interact? Why do we even need this second version in the first place? And what happens to all those what-if scenarios we usually imagine in the many worlds model? Let's unpack them one by one. Remember the notebook analogy? We had universes as 2D holographic films, but there's more. Reality can also be coded as a 1D straight line, a compressed version of information. Then it can unfold into 2D holograms, and then project into our 3D or 4D space-time world. So where is the second world? It's even beyond the straight line, outside all of this coding. In that realm, space and time might mean something totally different, or nothing at all. Think of it like a video game. Inside the game, characters live in a digital world with its own physics. But the player holding the controller exists outside of the game's rules. The second version of you is like that player. Since it doesn't follow quantum mechanics, Algarhy introduces the idea of imaginary complex forces, three new fundamental forces that might govern the second world. HD force, higher dimension force, does scaling, projection, entanglement, and paradigm shifting. Like a movie projector taking a 2D reel and throwing it into 3D on the cinema screen. B force, balancing force, maintains resonance and balance. Like a tightrope walker keeping the universe's rope steady. R force, retrieving force, creates and annihilates, bringing things back to their original state, like hitting undo or reset on the universe's code. These forces aren't the four forces we know. gravity, electromagnetism, etc. They belong to the second world's operating system. Here's where it gets even wilder. Your second version doesn't control you like a puppet master. It doesn't dictate your decisions or fate. Instead, it observes and interacts through the imaginary complex forces. Think of it like this. The first you is like a character inside a VR headset. The second you is like the gamer wearing the headset, but it's not controlling you or your decisions. Instead, it observes and interacts through a specific operating system. Let's name it the imaginary complex forces. Normally, in quantum mechanics, entanglement means two particles are mysteriously connected, but here Algarhy suggests a new kind of entanglement, through the HD force. This entanglement has special rules. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. You could have partial entanglement, only some parts of you connect. It can fade over time, rather than snap instantly. It can even involve imaginary particles not bound to our space-time, passing information back and forth. Instead of two phones linked by a solid wire, think of it like two Wi-Fi signals. They can overlap, fade, and even share signals with hidden routers. The Copenhagen interpretation of quantum mechanics says, the wave function is updated when an observer measures something. But wait, if you are quantum, then who observes you? Here's the two worlds twist. When you, the quantum version, make a measurement, your non-quantum version in the second world simultaneously measures you. That way, the loop closes without needing an endless chain of observers. It's like looking into a mirror that not only reflects you, but is also looking back at you independently. In many worlds, all possibilities play out somewhere, but in two worlds, the extra scenarios are erased, not by collapsing the wave function, but by formatting it. Think of your computer. When you delete a file, it's not shattered into many versions on other computers. It's simply erased or overwritten. This erasing is done by the second version of you, using those imaginary complex forces. That way, Elvis Presley is not still alive in some alternate universe giving TED Talks on physics. So what does your second version actually do? Algarhy explains it like this. The second version of you, your non-quantum twin, is like a puppeteer holding strings. But here's the twist. The puppeteer isn't deciding how the puppet moves. Instead, you, the puppet, tell the puppeteer how to move the strings. Why? Because the puppet's world, our quantum world, can only function with strings. Without the second version holding them, the play can't go on. It might sound overly complicated, but here's the reason. If everything in our world is quantum, then every measurement would create infinite possibilities. The two worlds interpretation introduces the second version to format and update the wave function, so the story of reality stays consistent without spiraling into infinite Elvis Presleys. It's like having an editor who constantly trims the script of the universe, keeping the narrative clean. So, what do we have? A you living in this quantum world, bound by probabilities. A second you living outside space and time, bound by different laws and forces. A cosmic relationship where one observes the other, formats possibilities, and keeps the whole system running smoothly. The two worlds interpretation gives us a new way to think about quantum mechanics. It invites us to imagine ourselves as characters on a holographic film, observed by a higher dimensional version of ourselves, a non-quantum twin, a version that ensures reality doesn't fracture into infinite chaos. And yet, for every answer, new questions open. What does it mean to live outside time? What laws shape that other world? And why does our universe need this partnership to even exist? Because, as Algarhy says, science is humanity's slow crawl toward the truth. Maybe the truth isn't that we've found the final explanation. Maybe the truth is, we still have a lot more to explore.